The Academy Award for Best Animated Short is an award given by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, otherwise known as the Oscars. The first ever award was given during the 5th Academy Awards in 1932. The category has had 3 names: Short Subjects Cartoons from 1932 to 1970, Short Subjects Animated Films from 1971 to 1973, the Best Animated Short Film from 1974 until the present. The Academy defines short as being not more than 40 minutes, including all credits. The first film to ever win was a silly symphony entitled Flowers and Trees by Walt Disney Studios. This category gave Walt Disney 12 of his 22 Oscars. Walt Disney and his studio was king of the 1930s, winning every Oscar in the category for the decade. Many of these years, he was competing against himself with many other Disney shorts, littering the nominee list. 1937's The Old Mill was particularly significant because it was the first short in which Disney used its multi-plane camera technology. 1939's The Ugly Duckling was Disney's last win of the decade and marked the end to their Silly Symphony series. Many of the Silly Symphonies in the 30s were based off fables and fairy tales, and all used Technicolor for the coloring processes of the film. 1940 was a significant year in this category, not only because it was the first year Walt Disney didn't take home the gold, but it was the year that many now famous characters got introduced to the world. MGM Studios had 2 pictures nominated this year: The Milky Way, which won, and Puss Gets the Boot, where the famous duo Tom and Jerry gets introduced, although not yet named. The third nominee in the category that year was A Wild Hare.
Guess who? Eddie Wilmore? Nope.
A Merry Melody cartoon and a Leon Schlesinger production. This introduced another iconic cartoon duo, Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd. Disney won again in 1943, but the subject matter was slightly different. Instead of fables and cute animals instilling morals into the audience of children, the winners this year were the first, in my opinion, to tackle more mature subject matters. Der Fuhrer's Face was an anti-Nazi propaganda short that was put out by Disney Productions. Donald Duck starred in this short, having a dream in which he is a Nazi officer in Germany. Watching this today and knowing about the atrocities committed by the Hitler regime, it's a bit unsettling to see a beloved Disney character depicted as a Nazi, or even seeing the brown shirt's doctrine being reduced to silliness and stupidity. On the other hand, the message was to highlight the freedoms afforded to the Americans in comparison to the lack of those in Germany at the time. This was just one of the many different films Disney created for the US government during World War II. In fact, 1942 hosted many anti-Nazi films like MGM's Blitzwolf and George Pal's particularly shocking Tulips Shall Grow. George Pal's Puppetoon series won him many nominations in the 1940s. He was one of the early stop-motion artists to be recognized by the Academy, and he collaborated in these years with Dr. Seuss. One nominee in 1943 stands out to me, and it's Disney's Reason and Emotion, what some say was the inspiration for the Pixar movie Inside Out. It's easy to see why, because it was personified emotion and reason in a person's mind and painted Hitler as someone who just appealed to emotion. If the 1930s were dominated by Walt Disney, then we can say the same thing about Fred Quimbley in the 1940s. Yes, Disney, MGM, and Schlesinger production films were very much represented, but Fred Quimbley won half of the awards in this decade, and a few more in the 50s. Fred Quimbley was the producer to the Tom and Jerry cartoons and received the Best Animated Short 8 times, but Quimbley had very little to do with the creative process and took advantage of his executive position in MGM Studios to steal the limelight from the true artists and creators of the series, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. Quimbley never invited Hanna and Barbera on stage to receive the awards with him.
How many times in your life can you win 7 Academy Awards and somebody else takes them? I mean, can that happen in your lifetime? Oh, God, be patient.
Hanna-Barbera's and MGM's Tom and Jerry are the most honored series in the history of the animated short category, winning 7 Oscars and 13 nominations. 1952, when Tom and Jerry won the Oscar again, the National Film Board of Canada received its first nomination for The Romance of Transportation in Canada. 1953, Stephen Bossestau's The Telltale Heart, based off Edgar Allan Poe's story, was the first horror film to ever be nominated in the category. He won the Oscar the next year for When Magoo Flew, which featured Mr. Magoo and the studio's first use of the CinemaScope format. This was a wide screening format that was used in many short and feature films throughout the 50s and 60s. Mel Blanc, the famed voice actor, received a lot of recognition throughout these eras of the Oscars, seeing how he voiced many of the star characters for Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera's winning pictures, like 1955's Speedy Gonzales, 1957's Bird Anonymous, 1958's Nighty Night Bugs, and others. The same year, Good Will to Men was nominated, a Hanna-Barbera picture that was a remake of MGM's 1939 Oscar nominee, Peace on Earth. In both films, animals are all that's left in a world where humans led to their extinction through war. The films point out the hypocrisy of men who wrote in their holy books about peace, yet always found ways to kill each other. 1960's Monroe marked a change in style from Oscar winners in the previous decades. With more muted colors and simplified drawing style, this Gene Deitch directed and Jules Feiffer written story brought a change of pace from the lively and colorful films that Disney and Looney Tunes were producing. Ersatz, or The Substitute, won in 1961, continuing the trend, created by a Croatian named Dusan Vukotic. Then, in 1962, husband and wife duo John and Faith Hughley won for the Best Short Film with their piece The Hole. The voiceover for The Hole was done by improvised conversation between jazz musician Dizzy Gillespie and actor George Matthews. Their characters speak on the prospect of nuclear holocaust near the height of the Cold War. Mel Brooks' The Critic, the winner in 1963, is similar to The Hole in that it's an improvised monologue. The critic monologuing critiques the abstract art, the actual film.
Must be birth. This looks like birth. I remember when I was a boy in Russia, it was biology. It was birth. Up, it's born. Whatever it is, it's born. Look out! Too late. It's dead already.
The Pink Fink won in 1964 as a comedy and the introduction to the clever Pink Panther character. Chuck Jones of Warner Bros. Fame won his third and final Oscar for animated shorts with his 1965 The Dot and the Line. Winners of the award in the 60s, like The Critic, The Hole, or Fred Wolf's The Box, are seen as some as examples of the dark age of animation, seeing as the cell count in animations were vastly reduced because of lack of funding in studios, leading to less fluidity in movement. This might be true, but the content and wider range of ideas expressed in animation throughout the 60s and beyond more than makes up for the drop in visual quality. Walt Disney would win his last short Oscar posthumously for Winnie the Pooh and The Blustery Day. The animation giant died 2 years earlier to lung cancer. Disney still reigns supreme in this Academy Awards field, with 18 awards and 49 nominations. Is It Always Right to Be Right won the last award under the name Short Subjects Cartoons. It was later name changed twice. The famed Orson Welles narrated this cartoon, illustrating the struggle between the young and the old during the peace and civil rights movements of the 60s and 70s. Will Vinton, father of the term claymation, created the 1974 winner Closed Mondays, along with the animator Bob Gardner. Vinton would go on to be nominated for 3 more stop-motion works. The NFB and director Co. Hodman's short, The Sandcastle, won the big prize in 1977. It was the first sand stop-motion animation to ever get a nomination. The National Film Board of Canada also produced a nominee in 1974 named Hunger, one of the first computer-animated films. It tackled greed and gluttony in what we call civilized society. The NFB produced the winners of the 78 prize Special Delivery and 79 prize Every Child. The National Film Board of Canada would go on to win 6 total Oscars and a whopping 29 nominations. In some lights, a person could say that this is proof that countries like Canada, who give significance and funding to cultural sectors, are doing the right thing. A Hungarian animated short film won in 1980 named The Fly, where the viewer gets to see the world through a fly's perspective. The same year, a Canadian artist and director was nominated and took home first place in 81 for Crack, and 87 for The Man Who Planted Trees. His name was Frédéric Bach, and his works had a powerful message about forest and wildlife conservation. They still hold significance today, maybe even more than then. Recognized by some, Richard Conde's The Big Snit was nominated in 1985. Another recognizable character, the Tin Toy, won in 1988 and was Pixar Studios' first nomination and win, starting a revolution in computer-animated films as the predominant medium for animation. Runner-up that year, named The Technological Threat, implemented computer and traditional animation in a meta-narrative about where art form was going. In the 1990s, we saw a lot of Nick Park, the famous English claymation animator. He was nominated twice and won once in 1991 for his short Creature Comforts. The other was an introduction to the clay duo Wallace and Gromit, A Grand Day Out. Wallace, Gromit, and Park also won in 1944 and 1996 for The Wrong Trousers and A Close Shave, respectively. Joan Gratz's 1992 winner, Mona Lisa Descending a Staircase, is an ode to some of the most recognizable paintings of the millennium. Those who remember the movie A Bug's Life will surely remember the short that he played before it, Jerry's Game, the winner of Best Animated Short in 1997, one of Pixar's most cherished works. The first, in fact, to feature a human being as the main character. An adaptation of Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea won in 1999. It used a unique painting on glass animation technique. The winners in 2000 and 2008 have similar messages about love of family and dealing with loss, father and daughter, and Japanese animation The House of Small Cubes. Pixar and creator Ralph Eggleston won again in 2001 with For the Birds. In 2003, Destino was nominated. It has one of the greatest histories and is among the most beautiful works ever to be nominated. Destino was originally supposed to be a collaboration project between Walt Disney and surrealist painter Salvador Dali, but the project never survived the Disney economic woes in the late 40s. Luckily, the project was kickstarted back up in 1999 by Walt Disney's nephew, Roy Disney. 2009's Logorama won, a French computer-animated film that tries to make the point that our everyday is oversaturated with ads and commercialism is taking over. In 2012, Disney wins again with Paperman, and what creator John Cars calls an urban fairy tale. The next year, a French film named Mr. Hublot won. The prominence of French animation has always been a thing, but in recent decades, the animators of France have stepped up their game. That is in part due to the renowned schools and studios in the country. Pixar's Piper won in 2016 for its masterful, detailed rendering of realistic beach birds. And finally, the latest winner was Dear Basketball. Animator Glenn Keane and retired NBA star Kobe Bryant created this film as an ode to the Hall of Famer's favorite sport. The Best Animated Short Film category has awarded some of the greatest animators in recent history. So many greats got their proper recognition on the Oscar stage. And the animators of today hope to follow in those giant footsteps someday too.